I moved into this apartment 3 months ago. It's small, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a narrow balcony facing the wall of the building next door. There's no view, no sound of children or passing cars, only thick silence every night. I liked it. I needed peace after years of living in a noisy boarding house. But in that silence, I started to notice strange little things. A spoon that I placed on the right side of the rack suddenly appeared on the left. The TV remote shifted a few centimeters from where I'd left it. The curtain opened slightly, even though I was sure I had closed it tightly before going to bed. At first, I thought I was just tired and not paying attention. I worked late, often coming home with my head full of office matters. But over time, those small changes felt too precise to be accidents. It was as if someone knew exactly where each object belonged and deliberately moved them just a little, just enough to make me doubt myself, but not enough to prove anything. I tried to calm down, telling myself it was just forgetfulness. But every time I unlocked the door, my heart raced as if I were waiting for something that shouldn't be there. One night, I decided to be sure. I arranged everything in the kitchen carefully, the spoon on the right, the knife parallel below it, the plate slightly tilted. Then I took a photo with my phone, just for proof, to make sure my memory could be trusted. That night, I went to bed early, but I couldn't really sleep. Every sound from the kitchen, the click of the fridge, the drip from the sink, sounded sharper than usual. Until around 2:14 a.m., I heard something fall to the floor, metal, soft but clear, like the sound of a spoon hitting ceramic. I held my breath in bed, staring at the half-open door. No more sounds followed, no footsteps, no creaking doors, but I didn't dare move. My heartbeat was so loud it filled my head. After several minutes that felt like hours, I forced myself to close my eyes, convincing myself it was just my imagination, or maybe the fridge vibrating. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. The next morning, I went straight to the kitchen. Everything looked normal until I compared the scene to the photo I had taken the night before. My hands trembled. The spoon was now on the left side, not the right. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows. I live on the 8th floor. No one could have gotten in without me knowing. But that fact only made it worse. If no one came in, then that means someone had been here all along. That morning, I skipped work. I just couldn't bring myself to leave the apartment knowing something or someone might be here with me. I checked every corner, under the bed, inside the wardrobe, behind the curtains. Nothing. Everything looked clean, untouched, but that didn't make me feel safe. It made me more uneasy. The more perfect everything seemed, the more I felt like I was being watched. I started paying attention to small things. I placed tiny strips of transparent tape on the door, right where it met the frame. I set up my phone on the shelf, recording the kitchen while I was at work. I even sprinkled flour on the floor near the front door, just in case there were footprints when I came home. That night, when I reviewed the video, everything looked normal. No one entered, no movement. But when I walked to the kitchen to turn off the light, I noticed one of the tapes on the door had fallen off, as if the door had been opened and closed again, very gently. I hardly slept that night. I lay still, my ears straining for the slightest sound. Around 3 a.m., I heard something faint, a click, like someone pressing a light switch from another room. My eyes snapped open. The hallway light, which I had turned off before bed, was now dimly glowing. I froze. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. Then, as quietly as possible, I reached for my phone. But before I could open the camera, the light went off again. Total darkness. The next morning, I called the building manager. I asked if anyone had access to my unit or if maintenance had entered by mistake. He looked at me strangely and said, "No one's been in there, sir. You're the only one with the key." He even showed me the security log. No entries, no visitors, no cleaning staff. I wanted to believe him, but part of me wished he was wrong, because the alternative was much worse. That night, I packed my things. I told myself I'd sleep at a friend's place for a few days, just until I felt calm again. But before leaving, I looked around the apartment once last. The kitchen was spotless. The spoon was back on the right side of the rack, exactly where it belonged. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. Because right before I turned to go, I saw something that froze my blood. The photo I'd taken, the one showing the spoon on the left, was gone from my phone's gallery.
I live in a small apartment on the third floor of an old building. The walls are thin enough that I can hear when my neighbor sneezes or when someone turns on the water. I've lived here for almost a year, and the place has always been quiet until about a week ago, when I started hearing a faint knocking sound from the wall next to my bed. It wasn't loud, but clear enough that I couldn't ignore it. At first, I thought it was just the pipes, or maybe some construction work somewhere. But the knocking came at strange times, 2, sometimes 3 in the morning. It was slow, rhythmic, and deliberate. When I knocked back once, it stopped immediately. The next night, it returned. Same rhythm, same wall. I tried asking the landlord who lived next door. He said the room was empty. The last tenant had moved out 3 months ago. He even laughed when I mentioned the knocking, saying maybe I was just too tired from work. But that night, when I turned off the lights, the knocking came again. This time, it was closer, heavier, as if someone was leaning against the wall and knocking softly with their fist. I recorded the sound on my phone. When I played it back in the morning, the knocks were there, faint but real. I wanted to prove I wasn't imagining things, but something strange happened. Right before the knocking started, the recording picked up another sound, a short breath, a low exhale, right behind the wall. Human, close. Since then, I've started sleeping in the living room. I can still hear it sometimes, not from the wall anymore, but from the ceiling. Slow, deliberate knocks that always seem to follow wherever I try to sleep. 3 nights later, I decided I'd had enough. I needed to know what was happening in that next room. I waited until the knocking started again, soft, steady, like someone tapping from the other side of my headboard. I pressed my ear to the wall, holding my breath. Between the knocks, I could hear something else, a faint rustling, the sound of fabric brushing against the wall. I grabbed a chair, climbed up, and leaned closer to the air vent that connected both rooms. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear. For a few seconds, nothing. Then, a whisper. I froze. It wasn't clear, just the sound of someone murmuring too close to the vent. I pulled back fast, almost falling off the chair. The next morning, I went to the building manager and asked for the key to the next apartment. He looked confused and told me again no one had lived there for months. Still, I insisted. Finally, he opened the door with me. The air inside was stale and cold, the curtains half torn. Dust covered everything. No signs of life. Except for one thing. The wall that separated our rooms had a small, circular hole right at the height of my bed. From that side, you could see straight into my room. There was something around the hole, faint fingerprints, as if someone had been resting their hands there for a long time. My stomach turned. I leaned closer to see through it, and for a split second, I thought I saw movement, the shadow of something pulling away. That night, the knockings stopped, but I still can't sleep. Sometimes, when I lie in bed, I feel a soft draft of air brushing my cheek, coming from the hole in the wall. And I can't help but think that maybe whoever was on the other side still knows exactly when I'm awake.
I work at a small stationery shop on the outskirts of the city. It's not a big place, just one long room with a glass display at the front and a cashier's desk at the back. Every night, I have to close the shop myself because the owner rarely comes. Usually, everything goes smoothly until about 3 weeks ago when I started hearing sounds from the bottom drawer of the cashier's desk. At first, it was just a soft scratching noise, like fingernails brushing the wood from inside. I thought it might be mice, but as the days passed, the sound became clearer, as if someone was knocking from inside the drawer, slowly and rhythmically. Sometimes once, then a long pause, sometimes 3 short knocks. Every time I opened it, the drawer was empty, only containing receipts and spare keys. I laughed at myself for being scared of something so trivial, but one night I heard the sound while counting the money. I froze. This time it wasn't just knocking. There was a faint breathing sound coming from inside the drawer, clear through the narrow gaps. I stepped back slowly, staring at the desk. The store's lights flickered slightly, making the shadows on the wall sway as if they were alive. I tried to ignore it. I even brought a small radio from home to make the silence less heavy. But strangely, every time the sound came, the radio signal would break up. Static, interference, as if something disrupted the frequency only when I was near that desk. After closing time, I decided to place a small camera under the desk, just to see what was really happening. But when morning came and I played back the footage, the screen showed something that made my blood run cold. For almost 2 hours, the drawer didn't move. But exactly at 2:37 a.m., the drawer opened slightly, slowly, and from the darkness beneath the desk, a pair of eyes reflected the camera light, staring directly into the lens before closing again, calmly. Since watching that recording, I haven't felt safe inside the store. Every time I sit at the cashier's desk, I can feel a cold draft near my feet, like a small gap exhaling air from below. I tried sealing the drawer tightly, even taping all its edges, but somehow, every morning I arrived, the tape would always be peeled back slightly, and the drawer open by just an inch. I didn't dare watch the next night's recording alone, so I invited my co-worker, Danny. He laughed at me at first, saying I was just overworked and paranoid. But when we watched the video together, his expression changed. At the exact same time as before, 2:37 a.m., the drawer opened again. This time, something was clearer. A pale, thin hand slipped briefly from the gap, pulling out what looked like a small piece of paper before closing again. Danny turned off the recording immediately and stared at me without saying a word. We opened the drawer together. Among the old receipts, we found a small, crumpled piece of paper with faint handwriting that read, "Don't sit here after 2." We stared at each other. Danny wanted to call the police, but what would we even report? A drawer that moves by itself? We agreed to close the store early that night, and I swore I would never come back alone. But the shop owner, Mr. Booty, refused when I told him I wanted to quit. He just looked at me flatly and said, "If you're scared, don't take the night shift, but never open that drawer again." 2 nights later, I returned to pick up my personal things. The shop was already closed, with only one flickering front light on. As I walked towards the cashier's desk, I froze. The desk was gone. Only a clean square mark on the floor showed where it used to be. I looked around, panicking. Suddenly, from the storage room behind me, I heard a dragging sound, and from there, the cashier's desk appeared slowly, being pulled out from the dark, but no one was behind it. Only the desk moving inch by inch on its own, scraping the floor softly until it returned to its original place. I stood frozen. When the desk stopped, the bottom drawer slid open slightly with a faint creak, and from inside, a new sheet of clean paper slid out, freshly written as if it had just been placed there. "You shouldn't have come back."